just freezes midair. Unless you're like in a D&D world and there's like one of those gel cube things that it got stuck. Right? Again, in this world, these laws, right? That would be a violation. So then we have to ask, well, okay, is God then interfering in other things as well as laws of nature when God invokes miracles? Is God then potentially overriding things like our free will? Right? So some other potential worries too. But he's trying to give us just reasonable belief. Just reasonable belief. So he's not aiming for proof here necessarily of God's existence, though he does think that according to inference to the best explanation, if you have reasonable belief that God is the explanation, then that's the best, and so it's probably true, right? But we're really just arguing for reasonable belief here. And so for that reason, he thinks what we're going to see as Hume's criteria, which I said there were a lot and nobody meets it, right? He says, that's too high. You're setting the bar too high. If that's the requirement for knowledge, we know nothing. Like, that's just too high. Most of our knowledge, again, comes from testimony. And again, he's trying to be practical about the way we actually get knowledge and the way we actually come to form beliefs. And he wants to say that most of our beliefs are justified. So we shouldn't, right, place that barrier too high. So he's going to be replacing this justification criteria with the principles of credulity and the principles of testimony. Okay, we can trust what we experience. We can, in general, trust what other people tell us, even if they're mistaken, right? Again, is that on the whole, we want to think that people are relaying the truth. And again, this might depend on how optimistic or pessimistic you are about human nature. Do you think people lie a lot? I am more pessimistic, but you guys are young. They're not as jaded as I am yet. So hopefully you think that that's the case. All right. So one thing that's going to follow from this, though, is that Swinburne's arguments will allow us to justifiably believe our own experiences of miracles and the testimony of other experiences. Okay, so this reasoning, because of the principles of credulity, which justifies our experience, the principles of testimony, it's going to justify our belief in other people's experience. But again, only if it's a non-repeatable counter instance. Okay, if someone is attributing a repeatable instance as a miracle, you can say, sure, that thing happened, but it's not a miracle. Right? So first it has to meet those criteria. Then if you want to be reasonable in believing it, right, you can either trust your experience or the testimony of others. So you can get that source of knowledge from either place. And as you will see going forward, that's not going to be the case for all philosophers. They're definitely going to say we're going to need maybe a higher bar when it comes to the testimony of others. Hume in particular is going to say that. Hume is going to say you should always prioritize your personal experience over other people's. Right? So even if everybody else tells you that they had another experience, right? You might think, well, that's reason that I should doubt mine. Not according to Hume. Hume says you should always trust your experience over others. So again, different intuitions. We're going to take a look at all of them. All right. So we have last few minutes. I did go again, we did a little overview, but we'll be diving into overall and Hume more on Thursday. But so any questions before I let you guys go today? Oh, Hume is what we call a moderate skeptic and an extreme empiricist, or a radical empiricist, right? So for Hume, the only things that we can have knowledge of are things that we experience. We have to compare our experiences to all of our other experiences. So the example he's going to give, again, it's like proportionality, like comparing like a ratio, finding out the percentage. So if you have like one experience of a miracle happening, but every other day of your life, your experiences have been of no miracles happening, right? You should doubt the miracle experience, right? Not the rest of the experiences, right? So the idea is that we're always going to be purporting it that way. So sometimes he's going to say we ought to doubt what we are experiencing in the moment, right? Even if you're like, well, I haven't taken any drugs, like I'm not in a space that's, made of optical illusions, all these things, right? Even then, if you experience something that goes against all of your previous experience, he will tell you to doubt it. All experience. Oh yeah, that a principle, like, is a rule, an ideal, something we're trying to aim for. Faith specifically refers to belief without evidence. we're going to talk about faith and whether or not it's rational to have faith in things, and specifically faith in God. And so I'm not going to get ahead of us, but that's a fun conversation. Okay. So then with that, in the last 2 minutes, I was right, at least according to Swinburne, right? Because not only would we have to be able to prove a violation of the law of nature, but we have to prove intelligent design, right? And so if that type of being is inclined towards violating a law of nature here and now, that's very not deistic, right? Deistic gods do not interfere. Our charitable version is not that he's apathetic or that this being is apathetic, but as we'll see, the idea is that there are potentially two different ways we can will things to happen, right? We can directly will them to happen, or we can allow them to happen because we are willing something greater, right? And so the idea is that, yeah, a deistic God might just continue to allow things to happen because it's in service of the larger will. I mean, deism serves a lot of purposes, right? It can be an answer to a lot of the problems that come up with a personalized God, especially when, even just in the cosmological argument, right? We were talking about whether or not God is in space and time or outside of it, right? Deism, placing God outside of space and time, alleviates some worries, right, about that infinite regress stuff. So deism can be handy to address a lot of philosophical problems.
All right.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, guys. Well, that's our time. I will see you all on Thursday. Have a good week.